All right, so to make our feet here, I'm actually going to go back up to the top and we're going to spin off another branch over here. So I'm just going to grab the output of the grid and bring it over here. And maybe I'll just throw it on a null so that I have something to look at here. Just going to tap that and you can see that we're able to just see our grid here. And let's think about how we want to create our feet. What we could do is actually just copy our feet onto these points of our grid. So let's just do that. We're going to make some basic feet and then copy them onto these points. Let's just copy to points. We'll wire in the right input. These are the points to copy to. So we're going to get that grid in there and we need something to wire in here. So let's throw on a tube for right now and wire that in. So you can see that now we've got our tubes. We've got a bunch of tubes that are all oriented in the wrong direction. And they're also way too big. So let's actually, on the copy to points, I'm going to untick transform using point orientation. So you can see now our tubes are facing in the right direction. And we can actually just bring the size of our tubes way down. So let's bring the height, the overall height down to a value of, let's say 0.1. And let's also bring the radius. So we've got the two radius parameters here. We've got the top and the bottom. I'm going to bring the top down to say 0.05. And the bottom down to 0.03. You can see that that gives us some nice little feet like so. And I want my feet to be a little bit more square shaped. So I'm going to actually reduce the number of columns down to 4. So you can see that they're looking nice and square. I'll add some end caps. So we've got those end caps on there. And then I'll just give them a 45-degree rotation so they're sort of aligned with the couch. I mean, either ways, and this is all subjective, but just to make these rotate and align, just felt like making that. We'll set in a value of 45 degrees along the y-axis here. Now our feet are not resting on the ground. So right before where we're creating our tube here, I'm just going to throw down a match size here. And we don't need to use another input on this one. We can actually just use this one by itself to justify the y minimum so that it rests on the ground. You can see it's just resting on the ground nicely like that. So when we wire it into our copy to points, you can see we've got all our feet sitting on the ground like so. And let's just merge this back in with what we've got going on over here. So I'm just going to bring this down. You can see that this is kind of cutting across our scene here. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click on this wire. And you can see it adds this little knot here. And we can just kind of nudge this off to the side. So you can see that it's just helping us organize our network a little bit better. So if I come down here and throw down another merge here, we can merge in our feet with the rest of our couch and kind of see where things are. So you can see we got the rest of the couch is sort of intersecting with the feet and the rest of the couch is not sitting on top of the feet. So we could first, let's put the couch on top of the feet and then we can see what we have to do next after that. So we're going to match size again. And we're going to grab all of this over here and set it on top of this. So wire in the match size right here and bring in the copy to points coming in on the right hand side. And you can see that it's centering our couch. We don't want to do that. We actually want to justify the y minimum of our couch to the incoming maximum of our feet. And when we look at the merge now, you can see that the couch is sitting on top of the feet. Now, one thing I'd like to do is actually align these feet a little bit better so that they actually stretch all the way out to the edges of the couch. I'd like the feet to be aligned with the bottom of these arms instead of sort of in the middle of this crack right here. So we can actually conform our copy grid up here. We can conform that to whatever the footprint is of the couch. So let's actually do that. Let's go and grab this right here. We've got our frame right here. We can use that to stretch out the size of our grid right here to match. And we're going to do that using another match size node. So let's bring this down like so and throw down a match size here. So I'm just bringing in this match size right before the right input of the copy to points. And I'm just going to drag the frame over and wire that in to the right input of the match size. And by default, it's moving it in Y. I don't want it to move it all in Y. So let's just set the Y justification to none. But we can do a scale to fit here. We're going to scale to fit. And it looks like uniform scale is actually pretty close to being perfect, but I'm going to untick uniform scale just because there's a little bit extra there in case we don't have like perfectly square geometry. So that's going to kind of help that fill in perfectly. So now our grid is perfectly filling out the floor plan of our frame. And now when we copy onto that grid, you can see that it is actually putting the corners of these little feet closer to where they need to go. It's actually filling all the way out. We just need to kind of shrink this in a little bit. So with everything selected down here on this final merge, I'm going to actually, let's take a look at this grid. Now what we could do is actually scale this in. So we're going to kind of undo what we did a little bit. We could scale it in using a transform, but what I like to use for this instead is actually a poly extrude, because it'll allow us to inset all of our feet using just one parameter instead of having to eyeball it with two parameters scaling in X and Y. So we kind of see what I mean. I'll throw on a poly extrude here. And with my display flag on this last merge down here on the poly extrude, I'm just going to start to inset it a little bit. You can see that it's actually, it's actually making kind of a copy of our feet. And that's because when we look at this poly extrude, we're actually insetting this equidistantly from each side. So we don't actually have to worry too much about the scaling. It's just bringing that in equidistantly like so. So I don't actually want to output two sets of, this side face right here. So if I just go out here and say untick output side, now we're not going to have two copies of our feet. You can see that outputting the side, we're copying onto these points right here, unticking it. We should have our feet being output like so. So now when we look at the merge and maybe we look at it from our fore view, you can see that on the side, it's lined up nicely. On the front, it's right there in the middle. And I mean, we could continue if we didn't get this just right. We could just kind of sit here and work this insetting until everything kind of lines up just the way that we like it, like so. And I'm just going to go back to the single view. And that's looking pretty good. So let's test out some of our proceduralism here. Let's go back up to the top of the grid and drag it out, and boop. You can see there, it adds some more feet for us. It adds another cushion in the middle. The noise might be a little intense. I might actually bring that down a little bit. Let's go down to the mountain, and I'll just adjust the amplitude here. I'll bring it maybe down to a value of, say, 0.1. It's a little bit mellowed out a little bit. And we can also go and say, adjust the height of our feet, and that actually carries the rest of the couch along with it. That's pretty cool. We can go over to the arms and adjust the thickness of our arms, and that kind of moves the feet along with it. That's pretty cool. We can adjust the thickness of our back, and that everything just kind of comes along with it. This is the beauty of the proceduralism in Houdini. So we can even make a one-seater if we wanted to. We could make like let's go back out here and make a, really long billion-seater if we wanted to. This sort of looks like maybe some sort of a seating system at an airport or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Just going to set this back to a 2x1 and center it at 0, 0, 0 again, and hit spacebar F. And yeah, that is how we can make our procedural couch. I just want to add some labels here. I'm going to label after the copy to points. I'm going to call this the feet. So let's start on a null here, and we'll call this. I'm going to wire this one in here as well. And we're going to call this feet. And we're going to go over here, and we're going to call this, we're going to put a null down here and call this frame and cushions. And we're going to go down here and throw down a null and call this the full couch. And I'm just going to hit spacebar H to frame up everything. You can see we've got all of our nulls kind of scattered around in here. I just want to give them all a color. So I'm going to hit the Control F key, and I'm going to find by type. So let's say find by type. And the type is going to be null. So here I'm looking for all the nulls in my network, and I'm just going to click select all. Double clicking that, you can see that it selects all my nulls and kind of has them selected like so. I'm going to hit this color palette icon and color them all purple. So I'm just clicking that purple button there. And if I click away, you can see now really easily where key points in our network are. Probably don't need this null anymore. I can actually delete that one. But you can see that we've got our cushions and our frames. So if we need to, in some other part of Houdini, go and reference these pieces of geometry, we have an easy place where we can go and grab them from our network. So yeah, that is how we can make a procedural couch in Houdini. And in the next section, let's start throwing on some pillows and blankets onto this thing using the vellum brush.